resistant to drug A. And then you give the person drug B. Well, it's the same probability of getting evolution. If your HIV are already resistant to AZT, it's the same probability that with a mutation they're going to become resistant to the protease inhibitors. Okay, so the same problem. So problem, same thing, we get rapid resistance to the protease inhibitors. Okay, now, and I just want to take a moment here, you guys, and just back up rapidly. So we get resistance to protease inhibitors. Okay, so I just want to do a little sidestep here to share with you this concept of sequential versus drug cocktails. Okay, so there's a problem then with what happened with a lot of these poor folks. They had sequential HIV drug therapy. Okay, and we'll see if we can't cartoon it here. So at first they get AZT, and they're kept on AZT until we have AZT resistant HIV. So now all the HIV in that patient's body, they're all AZT resistant, right? And so then those folks sequentially, then they are put on they are put on HIV protease inhibitors. And remember, all the HIV are already resistant to AZT, right? So the same high probability that with a mutation, these guys are going to become protease resistant. But now we have, so through mutation, so now we have protease resistant HIV. But what else are they resistant to? They're already resistant to AZT, right? So now you've got a strain that's multi-drug resistant. They're AZT resistant and protease resistant. And this is a problem you see not only in antiviral therapy, you see this in antibiotic therapy. So what is the solution to this? Now, like if I got infected right today, right? So the solution is you don't give these different drugs sequentially, one after the other. You give them how? You give them all together, right? And that incredibly reduces the probability of a mutant HIV at the same time developing resistance to two drugs at once. Okay? And let me see if I can't explain this a little bit. And I'm just going to make a value out of my draw out of the happy way. So we're going to pretend. Let's pretend that the probability of getting an HIV resistant to drug A is one HIV could become resistant, and I'll just make this up, out of every 10 to the 9 HIV that are replicating, okay? Now, if you use combination drug therapy cocktails, what happens is you multiply the chance of these resistant strains evolving. So here's the idea behind cocktails. So let's look at an HIV drug cocktail, a mixture of different anti-HIV drugs. So what if you give drug A and drug B at the same time? So now we're going to ask, what is the probability of getting an HIV that is co-resistant to both drug A and B? Okay, so we have to get a single HIV mutant that is resistant to both drugs at the same time. And the power of this is that you multiply the probability of a single mutation leading to a single drug resistant. So it's 1 over 10 to the 9 times 1 over 10 to the 9. And you guys might remember when we're multiplied by powers of 10, we get to add the exponents. So the probability of getting two drug resistant HIV, if you're given the drugs at the same time, is 1 HIV out of every 10 to the 18th HIV that are replicated. And that is an incredible decrease in the chance of getting mutation event that permits HIV to resist 2 drugs at the same time. And that is the philosophy behind combination drug therapy. If you can, you want to get your patient on 2 or more drugs at the same time to decrease the chance that you get a spontaneous mutation that permits that pathogen to resist those 2 or more drugs at the same time. And that's now, we are so lucky, you guys, because the folks have worked so hard to develop all of these different HIV drugs. So now we're not limited to just 2 classes of drugs, the reverse transcriptase inhibitors and the protease inhibitors. Now, literally, we have an arsenal of anti-HIV drugs that can be combined in different ways to create different HIV drug cocktails. Okay, so let's just look at some of those other anti-HIV drugs. So we stopped there in 95 with the protease inhibitors. And then in 87, they came up with a whole new class of reverse transcriptase inhibitors. These are non-nucleoside analogs, so they call them non-nukes. So in the hospitals, you might hear that, oh, I put the patient on a non-nuke. And so those are non-nucleoside analogs that still inhibit reverse transcriptase. They refer to the nucleoside analogs as nukes, like nuclear bombs. So the nukes and the non-nukes. Okay, so they came up with a second class of reverse transcriptase inhibitors in 97. And then the latest one, and oh my goodness, again, you guys, you would not believe how excited people were. In 2003, they came up with GP41 fusion inhibitors, totally brand new class of HIV drugs. And then in 2007, again, people were going wild, you guys. They came up with HIV integrase inhibitors, and this is so exciting. Up at the very top there, they came up with a drug that binds to the CCR5 co-receptor, so what can't happen? Attachment, right? So now we have a drug that mimics those CCR5 mutations, right? The drug binds to the CCR5, the co-receptor, and now GP120 can't bind to it. So it's like, you know, if I was taking that drug and I'm HIV positive, it's like the HIV can't bind to my co-receptor. It's like I'm one of those, you know, lucky mutants. So now you guys, oh, like if I got infected with HIV today, my chance of living long, you know, practically normal lifespan has increased tremendously. So what's happened is with the work of folks developing these drugs, HIV is no longer the death sentence that it was back in the 80s. Now, if you get proper medical care, and we know that's a huge issue, right here, how many of you don't have health insurance, right? So, I mean, this is easy, you know, say proper medical care, yeah, that's a huge issue. But if you get proper medical care and you get it started early enough, HIV can be considered a chronic infection. It's another of the chronic diseases that plague us, right? But it need not be a death sentence. And that is huge, you guys, compared to what was going on in the 80s. It was horrible. People were losing all their friends. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's, yeah, okay, we won't even go there. Okay, so we're going to think happy. So what you guys are going to hear, you've probably heard a lot about, is heart therapy. And this is in medical communities with what we more commonly call HIV drug cocktail. And cocktail, you guys, I think, is a drink, an alcoholic drink that has a lot of different ingredients in it, right? So that's a cocktail you might drink at a party. Well, an HIV drug cocktail is a mixture of multiple drugs, right? And some of these drug cocktails, there might be 4 or 5 different anti-HIV drugs included in the cocktail. So it stands for highly active antiretroviral therapy. And this, you guys, this is huge. This, you know, if you're having a bad day, you think, oh, the world's going to fight. Just think, all the folks that have been working so hard to develop these drugs, and all the folks that are out there in the world trying to make sure that folks that have HIV get these drugs. There's a lot of really good work going on. So again, if you can start on heart therapy, and now, I couldn't believe it, I still can't believe this, that up until like last year, they would delay therapy until your CD4 T helpers got down to a certain level, and I just couldn't understand why they would do that. And so one microbiologist was saying, well, the problem is a lot of these anti-HIV drugs, they are tough to take. like some of the reverse transcriptase inhibitors, can suppress bone marrow, for example. One of my friends has HIV. He's had it for a long, long time, and he'd been on really dynamite drug cocktail, and until just recently, and his HIV broke through. His HIV number started going up, so they had to change the drugs in his cocktail. And he said it was horrible. He was having nightmares. He was getting depressed. So that it's not a picnic, right? It's not a picnic. So one of these microbiologists was saying part of the idea was, since you don't want patients to start on anti-HIV drugs and then stop, because that's how you select for resistance, the idea was, well, we won't start them until we absolutely have to. And as a microbiologist, you guys, that was making me crazy. It's like, why wouldn't you start somebody instantly on anti-HIV therapy? It just didn't make sense to me. So last year they came out with a study, spent a lot of money comparing starting heart therapy, early versus later. And guess what? They found out if you start heart therapy sooner, that person that's infected, they're less likely to infect other people. Okay. Their CD4 count doesn't decrease so rapidly, so it's going to increase their lifespan, and it's going to increase quality life. So I know you guys, you guys know I'm not that smart. I'm just like, that did not make sense to me. It's just like a gut level, why in the world you would ever delay treating somebody for HIV? And now I'm really glad. Now that's not an issue anymore. So now they have, by running the study, now they've convinced everybody, yeah, if your patient is HIV, get them on heart therapy as soon as possible. Yeah, so, okay, crazy things out there. All right, so what else? Oh, okay, now here's another thing, you guys. On your table here, you might see you have to kind of stand on your head. What the heck is that going on over there? Okay, so compliance. Compliance is your patient's ability to take all the drugs they're supposed to at the right time, under the right conditions, and for as long as they're supposed to. Now remember, a lot of these anti-HIV drugs, they cause unpleasant side effects. Some of them can cause nausea, vomiting, like we said, nightmares or depression. So the problem is, you add that to having to take multiple pills throughout the day, some before you eat, some after you eat, some with this, some with that. It takes a lot of discipline, right? And as a result, patient compliance often isn't very good. And when you have non-compliant patients, you start selecting for drug-resistant strains, right? So compliance is huge. So what they've tried to do, and that's what we got here on the side, is what they're trying to do is combine many of these drugs into single pills. So you'll have, like in this one, they're called multi-class combination products. They'll put 3 different of the HIV drugs into a single pill to try to make it easier for patients, so they don't have to be taking, a different pill every 2 hours. So that's another huge issue with HIV is making sure that people that are on therapy are compliant. And that is huge, you guys, because what if somebody is homeless? What if they have no home? What if somebody is homeless and has mental health issues? That's a big part of our population, our communities, right? And you do not want to ignore them. You want to make sure that they're getting good medical care and that they're taking all the drugs they need to take when it's proper. Boy, that's a whole big issue in our communities. Okay, so rapid drug resistance, and then as we said, the third consequence was we can't come up with an HIV vaccine for the same reason that our immune system can't keep up. We can't find a vaccine that will protect us against all the mutant strains that are out there and all the future mutant strains. So, my thought is there's something about the immune system we just don't understand yet. We're going to have like a paradigm shift in how we understand the immune system, and maybe then we can come up with this HIV vaccine. But right now, we're just, so many people working so hard and just aren't coming up with a good one yet. So maybe you guys will be part of that. Good stuff. Boy, I sleep well at night if you guys would do that for me. Okay. All right, you guys. So, another good thing with heart therapy, you guys, and this has been a heart rate worldwide, is that you can have what's called vertical transmission from infected moms to their babies. Yeah, what a heartbreak. So vertical transmission, and you think of vertical as this direction, and it means transmission from one generation to the next, and usually it's mom to her baby. And so in one of my references, it described that it's possible HIV perhaps can cross the placenta and infect the baby in utero. Certainly during a vaginal delivery, if you guys have ever witnessed it, it's like a war scene, right? There's blood everywhere. So in a vaginal delivery, babies get bathed in all the blood, right? And that's where the HIV is. And then the big heartbreak, you guys, is that they have found that mom's breast milk has infectious levels of HIV. And this is just so heartbreaking. So a lot of babies that did get infected in utero didn't get infected during birth, got infected from being breastfed. And we know breastfeeding is the best thing you can do for a baby, right? It provides a lot of mom's antibodies, protects against diarrheal disease. There's huge issues why you want moms to breastfeed. In the reference I just saw this morning, they were saying that without therapy, the chance of baby, if mom's HIV positive, the chance of baby getting infected through those three routes, transplacental, during the birth, vaginal delivery, and then breastfeeding, the figure I saw this morning was around 25%. So 1 out of every 4 babies born to HIV positive moms, we would predict would be infected, right? And HIV in babies is devastating because their immune systems are already immature. Their immune systems aren't strong, right? So HIV in babies is devastating. But what they discovered is if they can get mom on heart therapy, and in this one reference I saw this morning, they're even talking about heart therapy for babies, okay? They can decrease infection rates in babies like 1 to 2%. I mean, and that's still heartbreaking, right? But at least it's better than 25%. 1 to 2% infection rate means that out of 100 moms that are HIV positive that give birth, 1 to 2 of their babies would become infected if heart therapy is available to mom and baby. So again, you guys, the heart therapy can make a huge difference, right? And it's so important that babies can be breastfed, especially in parts of the world where drinking water may be contaminated with fecal contaminants. And you guys, if you've ever bought infant formula, it can break you. It's so expensive. So in parts of the world where folks don't have much money, they don't have access to clean drinking water, how can they afford the infant formula? You know, if mom can't, and you know, what issues everywhere? Yeah.
So are you saying that they decreased it to 1 to 2%, or they decreased it 1 to 2%?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. So they, so this is with 25% of babies become HIV positive here, and with heart therapy of mom and baby, the total infection rate for the babies is 1 to 2%. So of 100 HIV positive pregnant moms who give birth, if heart therapy is available, only 1 to 2 of those babies will become HIV positive. In contrast, if no heart therapy is available, 25 out of every 100 babies born HIV positive will do that. I mean, that is so huge. That's huge. Yeah. So
why didn't they just automatically be like the HIV from the placenta?
I'm sorry. Why wouldn't it automatically happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why don't all babies get infected? Boy, that is such a gosh, you guys. That is such a good question. And what? And you guys that have had AMP, I'm struggling with, so you guys help me out. Because I don't remember all the mechanisms that are involved with, like, for example, transferring maternal IgG across the placenta. So you're having to go from mom's bloodstream, you know, in theory across her blood vessel walls, and I have no clue, you guys, on placental structure anymore, how many layers there, and then into the baby's body. So my guess is that there have to be like transport mechanisms for viruses to cross, because just like other viruses, not all viruses that mom becomes infected with can be transferred transplacentally. And I'm just guessing that for HIV, there must not be a wonderful transport mechanism, because otherwise you would think it should be 100%, right? You'd think all those babies would get infected. I mean, I would think, or close to 100%. So it might be the transport mechanism for HIV transplacentally is not that great. I mean, that's a lousy answer. It's a great question. So if any of you are kind of interested in that area, if you want to do a poster on it, you know, I said, that'd be dynamite, because I think it's such an important question. Yeah. And do you guys have any thoughts on that? Maybe you guys know about that already. Have you guys talked about it in A&P? Maybe? Okay. Yeah. If you email me, I'll try to look into it. And if you don't, I'm going to forget. I mean, these things are so good, you guys. My mind's like a sieve. You know, it comes in this ear and goes out that ear. So just help me out by emailing me these things. Okay. Okay. So that's good news, right? So I hope you guys have seen these years and years and years of research. They haven't all been for naught. These folks that are working so hard, they're making progress, right? And now the next big step is to make sure everybody gets universal health coverage. So, but I better not. Okay. I'll be in trouble. Okay, I'll get fired. No, all right. So, just little magnifications of the HIV maturation process. That's a micrograph of HIV budding from the cells, and just our heart. And this was a case that came up that, like, you know, people were saying, "Oh, this is great, we might have a cure," but I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is horrendous." This was, I think, like 2 years ago, and I think this was in Germany, where there was a report of somebody that was HIV positive. They think they might have cured this person. But this is absolutely horrendous, you guys. We can't rely on this. So the summary of events was, this was a person that was HIV positive. They had been on heart therapy. Obviously, they had access to good medical care. And then I think this person developed leukemia, developed some kind of cancer on top of the HIV infection. So what they did is that they used, I'm presuming, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, to destroy all the stem cells in the bone marrow. That's where all our blood cells arise from. And it could be that acts as a reservoir of HIV infected cells, totally wiped out all the bone marrow cells. And then they did a bone marrow transplant, and this is what's intriguing. I think the physician that was in charge was aware of the CCR5 mutant folks that are resistant to HIV. So they found homozygous CCR5 delta 32 donor, bone marrow donor. This was a person resistant to HIV. So when they did the bone marrow transplant, he lived. You know, sometimes folks don't live through it. He lived through it, and as far as I know, they can now. It's, I think, been at least 2 years. They can find no evidence that he is carrying HIV at all. And so folks are saying, "We found a cure," and it's like, are you kidding? I mean, how many people, number one, have access to that kind of medical care, and number two, you guys, this can kill you. I mean, this procedure of wiping out your bone marrow, you are so vulnerable to other infections. So it's like, I mean, it is good to know maybe it can be done, but this is no cure, right? People around the world, they aren't going to have access to this kind of medical procedure. So it's definitely, good. It gives us maybe hope, but you can't say, "Oh, we have a cure now, so we should stop research on vaccines." That's goofy. Very, very goofy. Okay. So we're gonna continue on, you guys. We're gonna leave HIV, and we're gonna turn to another virus that it too has caused a lot of heartbreak worldwide. But the vaccine story for this vaccine is much more hopeful. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on poliovirus and the benefits and disadvantages of 2 polio vaccines. So the poliovirus is it's called an enterovirus, entero referring to intestines. And the way we usually get infected is through fecal contaminated water, fecal contaminated food. Okay, so just kind of in a nutshell, so transmission is very different with polio than it is with HIV. Okay. So with poliovirus, this is a naked, and that's important, you guys know onboard, it's a naked RNA virus. And so, two important things here. Naked, that means that it remains infectious in the environment once it's been shed. And that's why fecal contamination is such an important way of spreading poliovirus. It replicates in the intestines, and consequently it's shed in the feces. So then we have in the feces will contain the poliovirus, and because it's naked, there's no delicate envelope to be damaged. The adhesins are in that tough protein capsid. It remains infectious. So wherever the feces goes, so if the feces goes into water, and this could be drinking water, or a big problem with swimming pools, because you guys know when you go swimming, you're swallowing a lot of that water. Yeah, swimming pools, rivers, lakes, whatever. And of course, also in food, you can have people contaminated feed, not animals. Actually, we are animals, but food. Okay. So, in many people, so we have fecal oral contamination, we swallow this, fecal oral transmission rather. So in many people, they would have really mild cases, subclinical cases, maybe they didn't even know they were infected. But probably, again, based on genetics, some folks were susceptible to neuroinvasive disease. Okay, so we have some, probably many cases not serious, but again, in a subset, but in some, you get neuroinvasive disease. And I was just reading here quickly before we came in, neuroinvasive disease, when the viruses replicate in motor neurons, the nerve cells, the neurons that carry the signals to get our muscles to contract, the viruses can replicate in motor neurons and destroy them. So as a consequence, people experience muscle paralysis. They can't contract their muscles. And respiratory muscles, the muscles involved in breathing, if they're paralyzed, we're going to suffocate, right? I just can't think of a worse way to die. I guess there are worse ways, flaking, but bacteria, viruses don't flake. Okay, so this is what happened to some of those folks, and this is probably from around the 1950s, before the first polio vaccines came out. And some of those folks with neuroinvasive disease they had paralysis of the respiratory muscles. They would, to sustain their life, you put in these iron lungs. And my understanding is within the iron lung, there was alternating positive and negative pressure. So positive pressure, press down on the chest, and negative pressure comes up. So it's helping the patient to inspire and expire mechanically. So these iron lungs were, helping these folks to stay alive. Now, in some cases, and I just really don't quite get this, you guys, in the reference I was reading, they say in some cases, some of the paralysis was not permanent. Some people could recover, but in other people it was permanent. And I remember as a little kid, one of my best friends in my neighborhood, we had the best time playing doggy and horses. Whenever I went to her house, we'd always crawl around all over the house playing doggy and horses because she couldn't walk. And she couldn't walk because she had polio. She was permanently crippled. But as kids, we thought it was great. It wasn't a problem at all. But now I think, wow, what a heartbreak. So it was huge when in the 1950s, this is distribution of polio now after the polio vaccine. Let me see if I got something here. Right. So it was huge in the 1950s when a polio researcher by the name of Salk came up with the IPV. And IPV stands for inactivated, meaning a killed, inactivated, so-called killed polio vaccine. And, sugar. Oh my goodness, this was so, for parents, such a big deal. Inactivated killed polio. because it was a killed polio virus, one of the problems was it needed multiple boosters. And the bad news with this killed virus vaccine is it had to be injected IM. And I still remember, I still hate IM injections, and I remember as a kid I was terrified of them, injected intramuscularly, so in the muscle, IM. I think it's intramuscular, two L's, don't know, barley, probably not. IM is better, okay. So it involves needles, right? Kids do not like needles, so that's a disadvantage. And the fact that it required multiple boosters, okay, so that's a disadvantage, but better than nothing, right? Now, Salk had a colleague by the name of Sabin, and Salk and Sabin were in a race to make a vaccine, and they had different approaches. So it was in the 1960s that Salk's competitor, Sabin, came out with his vaccine, and of course he thought his vaccine was better, and it was called the OPV, for, what do you think O stands for? Oral, right, oral polio vaccine. And this was an attenuated live virus vaccine. Attenuated means low virulence, weakened, attenuated. So low virulence, say weakened, but it was infectious, and we'll put live in parentheses because some people argue viruses aren't live. Attenuated live virus vaccine. And some of the advantages were this could be given orally per os, orally, PO. And I remember as a kid, I loved polio vaccination day because what they would do at our school is they would put the oral polio vaccine on sugar cubes. And we were growing up to get a sugar cube was a big deal. I could not wait for vaccination day. You'd go up there, they give you a sugar cube, and you swallowed it. It had the oral polio vaccine on it. Now, since it's an attenuated live virus, when you swallow it, it actually the vaccine virus, it actually invades your intestinal epithelial cells and replicates. So you are shedding vaccine virus in what? Yeah, you're shedding it in your feces. And this was actually described as an advantage because they said in households, maybe, let's say maybe one of the kids got vaccinated in the household. Well, and you're gonna love this, you guys. Whenever you defecate into your toilet and you flush it, you create fecal aerosols. Yeah, we've got our toothbrushes, the toilet, there's our toothbrushes. Okay, well, we won't go there. But the idea was, if you had perhaps even one Sabin polio vaccinate in your household from fecal aerosols, you might be able to indirectly vaccinate all of the other members of the household. And this becomes really challenging in communities where vaccination rates are low, right? I mean, that's a huge advantage if, like one vaccinate indirectly can maybe vaccinate 4 or 5. Because it was a live virus and it's replicating, it triggered really good antibody response. And because it's replicating in the intestine, it triggered, and we'll talk about all these antibodies, you guys, but it triggered excellent mucosal antibodies, the mucous membranes. And we're going to discover one of the really important antibodies that's involved in mucosal protection is secretory IgA. And this is a wonderful neutralizing antibody. It binds to pathogens, it binds to the surface of pathogens that we swallow and prevents them from attaching to our cells. So with this oral polio vaccine, you're getting lots and lots of secretory IgA produced in the mucus of the intestinal tract. So if the children ever swallowed the wild type, highly virulent polio vaccine, it was the neutralizing antibodies would bind to the surface and the viruses couldn't even attach to the children's intestinal epithelial cells. So that was a huge advantage. But you guys remember, what kind of virus is the polio virus? What are we still talking about? What's the genetic information? They're RNA viruses, right? And therefore, what can happen with them? They can mutate, right? And this is the heartbreak with the oral polio vaccine. Okay, the heartbreak is you can get, the process is called reversion. Reversion means going back. Reversion to virulence. What do you think that's all about? This is the process by which that weakened poliovirus strain undergoes mutation and causes polio. And so the heartbreak is that in some kids vaccinated with the Sabin vaccine, what happened to them? They develop polio, the vaccine related polio. And can you imagine as a parent, you would just about go berserk, wouldn't you? Here you are trying to protect your kids and the vaccine causes the disease. Okay, so, you know, live RNA viruses, gotta remember that. So what happened was that they actually had some caused vaccine-induced polio in some children. So because of this danger here in the United States, I think, and you guys correct me, because a lot of times you guys know more of what's going on in the real world than I do, I think because of this problem with the oral polio vaccine, I think many pediatricians now in the United States have gone back to this one. Because even though the kids hate it, even though it requires more visits, more boosters, it is safe. You're never gonna have the danger of the salt inactivated polio vaccine causing polio in your children, right? And the other thing with this one, you guys, is again, a theme we're gonna see with virus vaccines. You have to be very careful in immunocompromised people. You usually don't want to give them live virus vaccines because their immune system often can't control the vaccine microbe. So the other concern here is folks that have normal immune systems, if they're vaccinated with the oral polio vaccine, they can be shedding that vaccine virus and may accidentally infect immunocompromised people who can't control the replication even of the really weakened vaccine strain. So that's another thing we'll always have to remember with these attenuated live viruses. What is the chance of the virus spreading to others that may be immunocompromised? Okay, so WHO has targeted polio as the second infectious disease that WHO, the World Health Organization, it's been targeted as the next infectious disease to be eradicated, but there's all kinds of problems with vaccine issues and also because there's been huge disruption in public health services worldwide from civil unrest, warfare, and now this economic downturn that we're all going through. You know, people are saying we don't have the money to donate to the polio eradication campaign, but boy, sure hope that, you know, we can get this guy eradicated here, maybe in the next decade. That'd be good. All right, now what we're going to do, and I know you guys are pushing this, but what we're going to do is just go back. You guys will recall we reversed the order of the human viruses. We said we were going to start with the RNA viruses because they tend to be more complicated. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and work on the DNA viruses. Not to insult them, I mean, they're complicated too, but they don't have some of the complexities that we saw, for example, with influenza and HIV. So we're going to take a look at some envelope DNA viruses. We'll look at a few of the members of the pox virus family. We'll look at some herpes viruses. I need to apologize, you guys. This is totally wrong. The papillomaviruses, the wart viruses, such as HPV, these are naked viruses. So this is a huge mistake in the PowerPoints. I apologize. So we're going to do envelope pox viruses, envelope herpes viruses. We're going to do envelope hepatinoviruses. We'll look very briefly at hepatitis B virus. And then we'll do one naked DNA virus, the wart viruses, the human papillomavirus. So we'll just get started. We're going to first take a look at a few members of the pox virus family. The pox virus family includes smallpox, also known as variola virus. It includes cowpox, which was the first virus used as a vaccine against smallpox. And then we're also going to discuss monkeypox, which is an emerging infectious disease. Okay, so we'll just give you an intro here to smallpox or variola virus. This is the first infectious disease that has been eradicated